talked about as though she were too infirm to have an opinion. But she didn't protest as Walston picked her up and carried her fireman style. We followed the tunnel maybe another 100 yards. The way got narrower and shorter. Up ahead was a low, rough-hewn doorway. Carved into the stone above were these numbers, 317E. I don't like the looks of this, I said. Whatever we were facing, it was me, Leah, and Robin who'd have to be depended on. Walston was carrying on, and Cornelius couldn't do any other spells unless he dropped his continual light, and none of us wanted them. I don't like the looks of this though. Nobody seemed to care what I liked. Cornelius walked behind me, taking the light, perhaps still feeling guilty for having fallen asleep. Robin was behind Cornelius, then me, then Walston and Mom. We approached gingerly. If there was anybody there, they'd have seen our light and would have had plenty of time to look at it. So, once we got to the doorway, we left her, crouching, our weapons ready. We were in a small cavern, maybe about as big as a classroom, with the floors swishing by fountains. There were little piles of straw or rags all over the place, perhaps breeding nests. Well, now we know where they were taking us. I started to back out so I could breathe properly. But Robin put his hand on my arm. Look over there. At the far end of the room were 3 steps and a raised platform. More than anything else, the arrangement reminded me of an altar. On the platform was a pile of bones. If they were going to eat us, I said, they could have eaten us back where they found us. Yeah, Robin agreed. Without putting his sword away, he strode purposefully across the room. Halfway across he called back to us, I think you'll want to see this. Cautiously we followed. Probably for once Mom was grateful for Walston's carrying her. If she wasn't, she should have been. After 2 steps, I could tell there was more than just bones on the platform. I could pick out shiny, glittery things. Suddenly the smell didn't seem so bad. We all climbed the steps, then leaned in for a closer look. There were coins and gems and pieces of brightly colored cloth. They must bring everything they find here, I said in awe. The area was clean, no droppings, though the rest of the room was thick with them. Again, the impression of an altar, of offerings, came to mind. Robin held a pale blue crystal as big as a golf ball to Cornelius's light. Look at this shine. Look at all of it, Thea said. Cornelius finally set down the box of treasure that he'd found in the puddle, and ran his free hand over the new stuff. We should get out of here, Walston warned. Yeah, I told him, letting a handful of gold coins run through my fingers. Where does all this come from? Mom asked. People who've died in the tunnels, Walston told her. That put a damper on things. Let's just take this and go,
It's always
I
so
suggested.
gross.
I tugged on a large piece of satin on which some of the stuff was lit. Realizing as I did that the whole pile would probably end up on. Luckily the bones stayed where they were, but the cloth came free, loosened. A piece of parchment fluttered to the floor. Cornelius snatched it up while he pointed to a skull and asked, What do you think that was? Not human, said Robin. The thing was big, about the size of a laundry basket. I didn't speculate because I was busy tying knots on the cloth, trying to make a sack of it. Cornelius glanced up from the parchment he'd rescued. They're getting their nerve back, he warned. 4 rats were running across the room, headed straight toward us. Stubborn, aren't they? I kicked one off the steps and it rolled several feet before lying perfectly still. Robin stuck his blade into 2 more, and Thea bisected the last one. I don't think they like us messing with their things, Mom said. I tied 1 more knot to finish making the sack. We swept all the coins and gems off the platform. There was enough here that we could have bought the Rasmussen Inn and most of the town, even at their inflated prices. Put the other stuff in, too, Robin suggested. A little too smoothly, I thought. The box won't fit, Cornelius muttered, never looking up from studying the parchment, and it's safer not to put everything together. What have you got there anyway? I demanded. A map of the caves. We all crowded around. I think we must be in this area over here, Cornelius pointed. A little strangled sound escaped from me when I deciphered the warning script. You mean here, where it says, there be giant rats? Sure, Cornelius said. Remember those numbers above the entryway? Those were location coordinates. See, we're not too far from where we want to be. Do you see this long hole? If we... Psst. Robin pointed to the floor, to the rat I had kicked. The thing was on its feet again. Its front feet anyway, its rear end dragged as though injured. With single-minded insistence that laboriously moved. Itself up 1 step, then another. past me, past the sack of goodies on the platform. It dragged itself onto the pile of bones, and once again began climbing, inching its way upward. It reached the top of the skull, whatever it was, and balanced on the edge of the ice elbow. Then it leaned forward, until it tipped and fell into the skull, impaling itself on a sharp tooth inside. Boy, that was smart, I said. Suicidally, Robin said. We turned back to Cornelius's map. I think we need to do. Cornelius started. The bone rattled, perhaps loosened by the rat's fall. Is go to the end of the hall where the one jarred bone seemed to have started a chain reaction. I glanced over at the noise and saw that the whole front end of the pile of bones was settling. The rats first attacked, then turned right in. I did a double take. The bones were moving all right, but they weren't settling, they were rising. Move, Robin shouted. Move, move, move. We jumped off the platform as the bones picked themselves up and revealed themselves as a single huge skeleton rather than the odd collection we had assumed.
This always gets me with the elf supremacy.
I'm going to set you down, Walston told Mom as the rest of us spread out, forming a semicircle around the giant rat. Stay back until we kill it. It's a skeleton. Mom's voice shook. How can you kill it any more than that? The rat swung its huge head back and forth as though looking us over, evaluating us. It seemed to settle on Mom, though it was hard to tell, since its eye sockets were empty. It opened its jaws and snapped them. Walston said, to no one in particular. Well, if you have a cleric with you, clerics can turn the undead. You stay back. No, I told Cornelius, who was standing nearest to me. I didn't want to lose his life again. As soon as Cornelius started to retreat, the giant rat lunged at me. I jumped away and heard its teeth click shut inches from my hand. I kicked it away, too off balance to use my sword. Its leg momentarily, then it recovered, coming after me again. I slashed with my sword across its skull. No reaction.
I didn't know there were different types of dragons. I guess I should have looked into this one.
Jumped in, and from the other side,
I mean, I know there's different types of dragons, but I didn't know you could choose.
Loose individual bones. It swung its head to snap at the end, but skipped lightly out of its way. I moved in closer, trying to sever its leg, but the creature swung back too quickly. Look out, Harik, the occult.
Oh,
I said
pretty.
she meant look out for the rat's teeth and thought,
like
what
fish
does she
scale.
think I'm trying to do? So I ignored her, and backed into one of the rat's nests and tripped, landing flat on my rear. The giant rat jaws reached for me and I rolled. Not quite fast enough. The skeletal jaws clammed
It's
down.
more
right
worm
on
than
the
dragon, though.
yanking out a good-sized chunk. Yelping in pain and surprise, I scrambled to my feet. Walston chopped off the rat's tail, and that momentarily got its attention.
In the Witcher lore, these would be able to transmog into humans.
To knock loose more of the bones, but what? There were no loose rocks in this cavern, only the platform with the treasure. Treasure, I thought, that was it.
Poison
The treasure
dragon.
we gathered here was in the soft sack, but, Cornelius, throw your
Fire
box in.
dragon.
My shout drew the rat's attention again. I glanced at Cornelius, who hadn't moved. Cornelius. I dodged a swipe by the rat's giant claws. Cornelius. Thought thinking about it.
Ooh, more pretty fish scale.
The rat swung its paw again, and one talon scraped across my leather breastplate. Cornelius. All right. He cried in exasperation. He flung the metal box. Our first treasure from this expedition. It struck the undead rat's skull and knocked it right off the back. The rest of the body collapsed into a motionless heap of unconnected bones. The treasure box cracked open and flung gems across the room. I sat down heavily on the cold, filthy floor and rubbed the tingly spot on my scalp where previously a lock of hair had been. Gee, this is so much fun, I said.
Humans are just humans. I think that's so funny.
Sand hands.
They're the only thing.
With Cornelius' map, we found our way back to the main tunnel.
Like, there's no red guards or...
treasure.
Oh, what are the other races in Skyrim?
For more than 3 or 4 of the scattered pieces.
Brentons,
Shut him up.
like, they don't differentiate by, like, region at all.
But he still kept on
Whereas, like,
until we reached the
elves
place
are
where
elves,
the orcs.
but
There
they're
were
still high in
thousands of campfires
wood elf.
and stacks of bones. The orcs had eaten our horses right there at the tunnel. Our
Like, is there...
saddles
See,
were
there's sub-races of dwarves.
slashed and useless. hardly
Like, there's no
visions had
regional
as appetizing
differences.
as the horses, for those were still there. But the orcs had thrown
Like,
them
what
to
is the
ground and
geographic
stomped on them.
spacing of
To look as
Faerun?
blindly as possible. Use them as a toilet. The weapons were gone. Cornelius must have realized that we had gotten off easy, and he gave the complaining a rest.
Moondorf.
About 2 hours later. It's hard to judge time when you're nervous something ready to jump out at you from every shadow, and you're worried about your own, and you're exhausted and haven't had a decent meal in days. We rounded a corner and saw a grayish light streaming in through the back entrance to the shadow caves. Stop. It jumped ahead of me and threw her arm to block my way. What? Suddenly I realized I had been so excited to see this part of our journey that I had gotten several very long steps ahead of the others. It would be Thea who caught me at it. She pointed to a slender thread.
Heavy
which
on the
stretched
high
from a
elf
crack
genes.
on one side of the tunnel to another crack on the other side. The others crowded behind us. Trigger wire, Robin. Examining the spot where one end of the thread disappeared into the stone, motioned for Cornelius. Can you bring your light over here? Do we need to know what kind of trap it is? Mom asked from Ralston's shoulder. Can't we just step over the string? She sounded dangerously close to tears. Robin looked bitterly disappointed. I suppose, he said, that he was willing to forego one of his character's specialties.
Wait, is this like
Trap detection was a real tribute
a
to
dwarf
I wondered
halfling?
if she knew. In the leather. I high-stepped
Neat.
over the thread. My foot came down on a slab of rock flooring that bubbled
Look at the different
almost
types of
imperceptibly.
settings.
Fake out, I realized. The thread wasn't the trap, it was the means to make sure we'd step right for it.
Forest now.
I threw myself backward, catching my heel on the thread. I felt it yank out of the wall, and I tipped dangerously past my center of balance.
Deep sound.
Suddenly everything went dark, and I wondered if I knocked
We
myself
already
free.
did this.
A moment later there was a click.
There's no full
Then a hiss
orcs.
and thud that
think
my
that's
husband
pretty interesting.
recognized as being about
Full
to
orcs
dust
confirmed
crossing the
NPCs.
and slamming into the tunnel wall. Marvin. Mom's voice was frantic.
Half orc is honestly kind of like the most unfortunate race because it's never like
Is Harik so hard to remember?
not unconquestable.
You clumsy idiot.
It's always some
Cornelius
like
said, right in
sad
my ear.
backstory.
Can't you even step over a string? He'd caught me. I realized. Dropping his continual light.
Those
to the
ogre
sun.
genes
We
though
were close
are
enough to the entryway,
ogering.
but we weren't in total dark, and already my eyes were adjusting. I pulled myself back up onto my feet. It wasn't the string, I said. The trap was in the floor just beyond the string. Yeah, sure. They all said. Chuckling and jovial now that the danger was over, shaking their heads. They made for the patch of light. It was. I insisted. Robin patted my back as he passed.
Oh no, guys! It randomized to a high elf.
Outside. It was cold and drizzly. The sun was a patch of milkiness behind the gray sky, and pearl in a mother-of-pearl setting, mid-afternoon.
Me starting my 11th game as an elf.
With a skill I didn't have back home in the city. We hadn't had anything to eat for more than 24 hours. Gone were the woods.
Ranger's so OP.
Behind us were huge cliffs through which we had traveled.
Should we do
In front of us, there was a river, wide enough that maybe, maybe. The major
Tism Paladin
would
or
just throw
Tism
these
Slayer?
flares on the other side of the water, and for as far as the eye could see, the land stretched flat and featureless except for little clumps of black grass. The first thing we all did was kneel at the river's edge and take long drinks of water, our water skins, of
I
course.
guess I don't have a setup on that
We were
one.
gone with the rest of our equipment.
Me and my 12
I had
phones
no
against the
thirsty
world.
food until I saw the water and realized my tongue was stuck to the roof of my mouth. Which way to Senatia? I asked Ralston as soon as I was able to talk.
Eyes.
He nodded ahead but off to the left. I've never come through the shadow caves before, he said between gulps. I've always gone around the sand cliffs. I looked in the direction he was looking. The cliffs stretched on forever. Already the drizzle had penetrated my clothes. Already I was shivering from the cold. At the end of the cliffs, Ralston said, is Miller's Grove. You can just see Senatia from there. Thea said. So all we have to do is follow the cliffs. Ralston shook his head. You could. But that's making extra work for yourselves. With his finger, he drew a diagram of it. We're here. Miller's Grove is here. Phoenicia is here. He was showing us a triangle. The straight line between where we were and where we wanted to be cut off the angle where Miller's Grove lay. If we don't get lost,
What are the druids? Maybe we do a druid this time. Haven't played one of
Austin
those.
assured us. All we have to do from here is walk straight into the sun.
What type of
Where the sun would be. If it
No,
weren't
we
for
gotta
the
have an
rain.
eensy-weensy druid.
We all looked at each other. We certainly don't have any time
Only
to
one
spare,
giant druid allowed, and
Cornelius
that's
said,
else.
which we all knew already. Well, I think we should take the short way, but first, he stared meaningfully at the sack tied to Cornelius's belt. We should divide the treasure. He threw Cornelius's words back at him. It's not safe to keep all the treasure in one place. Look, I protested. Can't we? I agree. Thea cut in. Fine, I said, throwing my hand from my disgust. We sat on the ground and divided our treasure. First, we drew blades of grass to establish the border in between shoots. Then we went round and round, each person picking one piece till all the pieces went on. Boston got to pick them all. Because non-player characters have to be included, and we each had belt pouches, and nobody ended up with more than those people. I was just pulling tight to draw straight on mine, when Cornelius squealed. My goodness.
Hyperfixation druid?
I saw that he was standing looking down at his feet in dismay. On his feet were his old regular boots, the ones that he'd been wearing under the ones he had gotten from the troll statue. Those stinking rats stole my boots. I said. The thing was. Robin was sitting between us, his legs outstretched before him as though he had nothing in the world to hide. On his feet were Cornelius's boots. Robin saw me looking at me. Well, said Thea. And as far as I could tell, she hadn't noticed the boots on Robin's feet. Easy come, easy go. Cornelius kicked at a rock but missed. Foul stupid thieves, he fumed. At least his use of the plural indicated he meant the rats, not Robin. I assumed Robin had stolen the boots last night, when he'd offered to take them. First Watch and the illusionary torch had still been giving some light. If Cornelius was too unobservant to have missed them till now, I figured that was his problem. Come on, I said. Let's get going. Maybe we'll find a nice lizard or a snake on the way, and we can fry it up with some crabgrass and divide it 6 ways and have a wonderful feast. Shut up. Cornelius grumbled. He kicked at a clump of grass that was no farther than spitting distance from Robin's feet, then walked to the river's edge. He raised his hands and said something in whatever language it is that lizards speak. Going to part the Red Sea? Robin asked. No. Cornelius answered, fishing. For a moment I thought he was being sarcastic. Then I scrambled to my feet and joined him, as did Walston. One very large fish was swimming around a group of smaller fish, hurting them, I realized, bullying them toward the shallow edge. The trout's an illusion, he said, which I already guessed. Grab the smaller ones. Fine, I said. How? Zooming down. Walston snatched one of the smaller fish and tossed it, still wriggling and flapping, onto the ground behind him. Then he leaned forward, ready for another. I said, like that. Walston turned out to be a natural, which was a good thing. Theo was too squeamish about holding onto the slippery, squirming fish once she lifted them out of the water, and Robin and I had terrible timing. Walston landed more than the 3 of us combined. Once we had a pile of them. Cornelius told us to gather some of the grass so we could make a good fire.
Where to next?
You'll never be able to get a flame going in this damp.
What was that?
Walston said,
Let's hope the local...
picking up one
Hells,
of the fish.
be wary. This place is trapped.
My empty stomach heaved as he bit into it, raw and unclean. Cornelius saved us from that fate. Sushi only for those who want it, he said. I can magically light a fire for anybody willing to especially for cooking. Fish is not one of my favorite things, but this fish smelled wonderful as we waited there in the cold drizzle, each trying to sit as close to the fire as possible. Robin pulled his cards from his pocket. Pick a card. He told me. Any card. For want of anything to take my mind off my stomach, I picked a card. 5 hands later, I'd lost 5 coins and 1 snake bracelet. Count me out, I said. And he turned to Walston. Pick a card, he said. Careful. He cheats, I warned. But by then the fish were half cooked, and that was as long as anyone was willing to wait. As soon as we finished eating, we crossed the river. Luckily, it never got much deeper than chest level, because Walston carried Mom piggyback. On
Where's
the
that
other
beholder
side,
neck tat?
he switched and put her across one shoulder, the easiest position for him, but the one she hated the most, with her head down and her rear end up in the air. For myself, I was just thankful that between the rain and the river, most of the orc blood and grime washed off. Eventually we left the drizzle behind, and the ground became hard-packed dirt with gray cracks. Our wet clothes gave off steam in the dry heat, and we all smelled like wet dogs, finally. After what seemed like 3 or 4 weeks, what was only hours, we could see something ahead. Something besides endless clumps of grass and endless sunny
It's giving henna tattoo.
the desert. Walston said. The unnamed desert. Wonderful.
Where do we go dot?
I said. We have to cross the desert to get to Sinatia. I knew that. But I didn't have to be enthusiastic about it.
We need more
As we got
Baldur's
closer,
Gate neck
much
tats.
closer, we saw something else. But at first we couldn't tell what it was. It looks like signs, Thea said eventually. A series of signs just beyond where the desert starts. Sure, Robin said. They say keep off the grass. We were all too exhausted to laugh. Not that it was that funny. We couldn't make out the wording until we reached the actual edge of the desert, which was a distinct boundary. A strip no more than 10 yards wide, where the ground got sandier and the grass got sparser. Beyond that, the sand was as thick and white as in a brand new sandbox. What each of the signs said was beware of sand hands. Sand hands? Robin said. Sand hands? What in the world are sand hands? I wasn't sure. We all looked at each other. We all shrugged. I never heard of anything so ridiculous in my life, Robin said. He took a step into the sandy area before the desert, and another. Glancing back, he grinned at us. He crossed the not-quite desert strip. Still nothing happened. Again, he
Oh
glanced
my
back
god,
to
they
grin.
defaulted
He
the
took a
Orin
next
hair?
which brought him abreast of one of the signs, and he drummed his fingers against it to show his contempt. He took another step, and his foot sank
Long
deeper
hair
than the sand that he had
supremacy.
anticipated, causing him to
I
stop.
need all of my adventurers to
He pulled
have at
himself
least
free, then pitched forward.
like 30-inch sleeves.
Hey, he yelled. Surprised. Then, hey, he cried again. And that was the
Because trust me, if you try and just have that hair while you're adventuring, it'll just be like not city.
It sure looked like a hand to me. A human hand. It had hold of Robin's right ankle, and it tugged.
Such a flex when elves have long hair.
Robin pulled out his sword and jabbed into the sand by his foot. No reaction that we could see. He suddenly jerked forward. The sand came up to his right knee. Suddenly another hand popped out of the sand and grabbed his left ankle. Help. Robin screamed. Harek. Cornelius. It was like his calling us by name stung us into action. I started running across the strip that divided us. Robin was tilted over, his right side sinking faster than his left. He continued to plunge his sword into the sand all around him, but still without effect. The sand was up to his hips by the time I reached the sun. I reached forward with my left hand. He dropped the sword, which was no use anyway, and a hand surfaced to grab it. I slashed at the hand with my sword, but it was too quick. Forget it, I told myself. The important thing was Robin. Grabbing his hand with my left hand, I tugged. He was racing, and I wasn't helping at all. Cornelius had come up behind me and seized hold of my belt. Use both hands, he commanded me. I dropped my sword on our side of the side and reached for Robin. He was buried up to his chest. Do something, he screamed. More hands broke the surface of the sand, reaching for Robin's shoulders, pulling him down. They had run up beside us and struck at the hands where they came out of the sand, but there were too many of them. Any one of the hands could dodge down out of her way, and there were all those others, pulling Robin down, till his chin was resting on the sand, till his chin was disappearing under the sand, till more hands pressed down on the top of his head. And then I remembered the boots. Say the magic word, Robin, say that. Apostrophe. The hands gave a final tug and Robin's head popped under the surface. Chapter 22. Changing plans. As he came down heavily on the sandy ground, after all the fighting and snarling and sarcasm and one-upmanship and cheating at cards, there was a hollow spot in the pit of my stomach that had nothing to do with lack of food. Austin came up behind me, having put Mom down at the boundary where the sand began.
Are these the same?
Stubborn as always. Mom wasn't going to be left behind and was walking toward us, slowly.
Oh, no different front bangs.
Seeing that it was too late for rushing to be any use. Gone. Walston said.
Oh, this is bringing me back to like early World of Warcraft, like pre-Wrath of Lich King.
Clerics can raise the dead.
I always
I
did
rested
green
my head
hair.
in my hands. I was beginning to get a headache myself. That Cornelius said in a
Like
dangerous
this,
tone of
but
voice.
like the night elf
He
ears.
stooped down to put his face on the level of mine. Say the magic word. That. Did Robin have my boots? Cornelius grabbed the front of my shirt and dragged me to my feet. I was too surprised to resist. Did you help Robin steal my boots?
Too good.
He screamed at me. I shoved him away. Don't you touch me. You incompetent sleazeball. Why didn't you use your levitation spell? Oh yeah, he said. Obviously things had happened too swiftly for him to think of it. I hadn't thought of it till a moment ago. Oh yeah, he repeated. He started to raise his hands for a spell, and I went for my sword an instant before I remembered I had thrown it down to help Robin.
Funny enough, my actual strength is an 8, so this is actually buffing me quite a bit.
He had to use his hands to keep himself from
And same with charisma. Yikes.
Stop it. He commanded. Both of you. She gave me a hard shove. You're acting like boys. Cornelius rubbed the back of his leg and said with a pained expression, We are boys. Well, you're acting like stupid boys. Robin was a thief. We knew that all along, so knock it off. I rubbed my chest where she had stiff-armed me. Yes, Mom, I said. Now, she said. If Robin used the magic word in time, he's back in the troll statue. But we certainly can't go back for him. Maybe, if our timing has gotten lucky. When the others come back from the town, they'll pass by there and pick him up. Since one has anything about this, I remember Boston in time ended off the word game. Since when have we been lucky about anything? He ignored me. In any case, there's nothing we can do. We have to press on. Agreed. Boston, and I said. Cornelius grunted. Agreed. My mom started to say, but then she swayed. And before anybody could move, she dropped to the ground. I'm all right. I could hear her weak voice protest as we crouched around her. I'm sorry. I just felt so tired and dizzy. She closed her eyes, and I could see her chest heaving as though she'd been running around the block. I'm sorry, she mumbled. I'm sorry I'm such a burden. Take it easy, Cornelius said. patting her hand. "We need to find some place for her to rest," Thea said. "We need to find some place for all of us to rest." I shaded my eyes from the sun, which was low enough to be turning the edge of the sky pink and orange. The row of warning signs extended as far as I could see. I turned to Walston. "This Miller's Grove. Will we reach there before nightfall?" I thought Miller's Grove was out of the way. Cornelius interrupted. "Yeah. But obviously we can't cross the desert here. Does the land get any more hospitable between here and there?" "Miller's Grove is long and stretched out," Walston gestured, indicating parallel to the desert. "We'll be in the surrounding woods long before we get to the mill, beyond the cliffs. There's always something to eat in the woods, and we won't be in the open." The longer we waited to eat, the less fuzzy any of us was going to be. "Well, if you could carry," Felice again. I wasn't sure how much Mom was aware of. Walston picked her up, the head down. Rear end up technique she loathed, and she looked awfully limp. As we started walking, an idea occurred to me. "Mom," I said. "Mom." Mom opened her eyes and raised her head. "Do you still have that necklace? The one from the troll statue? If Robin said the magic word in time, the crystal will be gone." "Of course," Thea interrupted. "If Robin said the magic word in time, the sword will be gone too. Of course." She raised her voice for Cornelius's benefit. "There's no telling where the sword is, since a certain member of our party made me throw that away. Never turning back."
Remarkable.
Cornelius grunted like a pig.
Good luck.
Mom groped around her neck and the opening of her dress. "It is gone," she said. Walston, ever the optimist, said, "100 opportunities for you to have lost it in the shadow caves." Mom let her head drop back down without a word. I hoped for all I was worth that Robin had made it, even though the chances were that, even if he had survived, he'd never catch up and we'd never see him again. Chapter 23. By the light of the moon. Our shadows got longer and longer until they disappeared entirely. To our right, the beware of sandy and signs, posted one every several hundred feet till the land met the distant horizon, melted into the evening darkness. To our left, we were vaguely aware of the looming sand cliffs, despite the fact that they were miles away. Eventually, we reached the forest, where we were too exhausted to care anymore. We debated whether to
Targaryen
light a fire,
tiefling, yes or yes?
weighing the attention it would draw against the warmth and security it would provide. But even Thea, who was the only one raising any objections, seemed to be hoping for a fire. She just wanted us to be aware that she had lodged a complaint that way, in case anything went wrong. She could remind us that she had told us so. Of course, Cornelius had already lit a fire magically that day, so we had to use flints. "I'm going to see if I can find any game," Walston announced as Thea and I struggled to set spark to dried birch bark. He disappeared into the blackness of the night. Not that I could see he'd have much luck. The orcs had made off with their bows, and I couldn't imagine anybody, even Walston, sneaking up close enough to a forest creature to be able to stab him with a sword. There was a full moon, though it was playing peekaboo with the clouds when it was out. I could see Mom sleeping on her makeshift mattress of leaves, waiting for the fire. Cornelius had fallen asleep still sitting up. I helped Thea arrange the fish. We still had 6 of them, 1 for each of us, plus 1 that would have been for Robin. Too bad. I thought for the 10th or 12th time that day, there had been no way to carry some of the river water with us. We sat warming our hands at the fire, saying nothing to each other. I wondered how long we should wait for Walston before we ate without him, and tried to decide who would have first watch. And I didn't want to ask Leo what she thought, because she was obviously more patient than I was, and she'd probably take it as weakness on my part if I did. From alarmingly close, a wolf howled. Close enough that Cornelius sat upright, instantly awake. close enough that the hairs on my arms sat upright. I slipped my sword out of its sheath. Next to me, he had mirrored my action. Cornelius stood, his back to the tree, his fingers flexing. Mom groaned in her sleep, as though the wolf's call had pierced through to her dreams, and she rolled onto her side. Then the cry of loneliness or challenge or declaration of territory, faded till it seemed to sink beyond my threshold of hearing rather than to cease. My heart thudded in my chest. The wolf repeated its howl, and again a third time, never changing, never coming closer, telling other wolves about us, telling them dinner was near. I waited for yet another cry, and waited. Locusts grated noisily. Branches settled in the cooling night air. The campfire crackled. No longer as cheery as before, but whatever the message had been, it was over. And suddenly I had an awful thought. What if the wolf had already found its dinner? Walston, I called. Behind me. From the opposite direction Walston had taken.
Walston's mad sus, you guys,
direction
I'm
from
telling
which the
you.
wolf had howled. There was a whisper of leaves and underbrush that was more than just branches settling. I motioned for Thea to stay where she was, in case it was wolves, in case they were circling us in. Cornelius moved to my left. Should I wake Mom? She wouldn't be able to help. She might in fact get in the way, still. If we had to make a sudden escape, being awake would give her a head start. Or I had a chance to decide. A figure stepped out from behind a tree at the rim of our firelight. It was a lot closer than I had estimated from the noise. And the fact that the shape
Will not
was
be so
human
precious
didn't
with
make
it.
me
This is
less
like the 11th game
But
I've
then
played.
it said, Cornelius, Harek, and stepped closer. Anxiety evaporated into relief. No Kono, I sheathed my sword. No Kono motioned for the others behind
Do we get
him to hurry
confirmation
up.
that that is in fact
Marion
the
and
Emperor?
Ford. That was why I had been confused by the distance. It was the two of them I had heard, no Kono, and Dee and Stealthy. Could have come up behind me and tapped me on the shoulder before I had been aware of him. We all hugged and said how happy we were to see each other and asked, "Did you hear that wolf?" And everybody said, "Sure did." And we speculated how close it might be and wondered how safe these woods were at night. Then they asked, "How's Felice?" And we said, "No better." And they were shocked and dismayed and said that they had been unable to find the town, that they kept writing and writing, and no matter which direction they went, they always found themselves back where they started. And they knew that she had been on the right track and that she must be here by now. We told them about Boston, and that orcs had eaten our horses, and they said they still had theirs, but they had tied them back in the woods when they had gone to investigate our fire.
So did everybody just forget that they got teleported into this?
I better tend the fire. Cornelius said, I better keep an eye out for Boston. Yeah, I said. But my mind went blank. Marion put her hands on her hips and tapped her foot. Where's Robin? She repeated ominously. I could have said I had to check on her, but it was too late for that now. One step and Marion would grab me by the shirt. I just knew it. Wait. Sort of. Lost him. Sort of. You lost him. Sort of. Marion grabbed me by the shirt after all. What do you mean? You lost him. She screamed at me. Nokona and Marion stepped closer. I got the impression they might both know. She started beating me up too bad. After all. We were short on players and getting shorter all the time. But they too seemed to take on intentional provocation. I explained about the sand hands. First, how Robin had chosen to before the science of attendance. Ian and Cornelius got it first. Then I told the other things that had happened. About halfway It was Fjorden who spoke. Well, we wasted about half the day in it. We kept thinking maybe if we circled around, or if we tried walking backward, or I can't remember what all we tried. But finally we gave it up as another
Oh, that is a fan service shot if ever there was one.
Late afternoon we came to this old guy's cottage. Yeah, I said. Tell me about it. I don't know explain to you how it was crystal from a sun-petrified tree. I had it brought up about how old convinced it
I don't remember this part.
Us into fixing
Is this new cinematics?
Fjorden shrugged. Nothing much to say. Sweet
These
old
people
guy.
just refuse to let us get our money's
Sweet
worth
old
with
guy.
this. They, like, insist on giving us more perks.
Fjorden glanced at Marion for confirmation. How would you describe Fred?
Honestly, god tier
Fred.
devs.
Sweet old guy. Marion said. Fjorden glanced at Nokona. Sweet old guy. Nokona said. Fjorden continued. Sure. He was full of useful information, real friendly. Shared his dinner with us and everything. We fixed his front door. Some hoodlums had done a real job on it. He
Oh,
gave
now
us
we
6
suffer
silver
through the
pieces
tutorial
for it,
levels, you guys.
even though we said he didn't have to. So I guess you could say that was
What's the worst part
treasure.
about starting these games?
Thea and Cornelius had the sense not to say anything. He had this statue in
Wait,
the
what
back
type
that
of
he said
druid
was
did I
good
pick?
luck
Or do you not get to pick
Which we
until,
did.
like, a couple levels
And I
in?
guess we've had pretty good luck since. What did you say? Nokona nodded.
I
Marion
think we're
said,
gonna be moon
"Until
druids.
now."
We're spore
Say.
druids.
Fjorden turned back to me. Fred's troll statue wouldn't be the
Let's
same
look into
troll
it.
where you got your magic objects, would it? Thea, Cornelius, and I all nodded.
Oh,
Before he could say any more, the same crippling howl of the wolf brought us all to our feet. It sounded as though it came from the same spot as before. Once again, it howled 3 times. I don't like this, Thea said in the thick
Did I mod
silence that
this?
followed. Where's Walston? Mods exactly. I think I should go look for him, I said.
looking at
Just
him.
in case something's happened. We're fresh.
Fun fact, back when I used to play World of Warcraft, I hated the quarterstaffs.
Mind my step.
Nokona wasn't interested enough to argue.
I would always get them in loot drops, and it was just
Someone else got
Irrelevant
it.
to me. Which way was your
not
friend
the
headed?
vibe.
I let him out of the little clearing, aware that while I might not step as lightly as Nokona, Fjorden crashed through the underbrush like a dazed buffalo. Anyway,
Cursed to put my hands on everything. Might
he
be
picked
other
up the
survivors.
story where he'd left it, despite my instinct to proceed silently. Come nightfall, we
Might still be
camped just
stuck
outside
inside
of the
if we hadn't
Shadow
been
Caves,
attacked.
which was what Fred recommended. Only a fool would go there at night, he said. Good night's sleep. Passed through the caverns at first dawn.
Oh no, did I pick the male voice?
Saw what was left of your horses.
Ah,
Nokona said there weren't any human or elf bones in it,
Dead.
so we figured you made it through.
Good.
When we got outside, Nokona couldn't pick up your trail. Said he didn't think you passed.
Wonder who was
Might.
inside.
But we knew you had half a day's lead on us. So Marion, and I figured you had to be ahead of us. Yeah, I let her know. That was probably about the time we were rolling around in Red.
I also
Here, he
used
said.
the male Siri voice.
He stopped talking while we climbed a small
You
but
get
steep
grind.
I looked back and could just barely see the light from our campfire. Despite the fact that we were only a minute's walk away, that's how thick the trees were.
This is the
Fred
pool
had
that
warned us
thing
about the
came
sand
from.
hangs,
The
so we
parasite now writhing
rested, figuring
behind
that's
your
what you must
eye.
have done. When we got to the mill, come about midday, the miller said he'd never seen you, and that's when we had to face the fact that we must have bypassed you in the caves. It didn't take you since noon to get here, I asked.
You notice nothing
I'd been
more
hoping
than
we
meets
didn't
the
have that
eye.
much farther to go. No. The Pixies threw a feast for us. Pixies. Yeah. We had a real nice little adventure. That's where we picked up our treasure. Treasure. I was getting pretty tired of his dropping this on me piece by piece while we dodged low branches and pushed through clinging bushes. His shirt under my leather breastplate stuck amply to my back. Yeah,
Well,
the artist said. I forgot you didn't see our horses. They're pretty well laden down. What with the reward the pixies gave us and the sprites, and the dragon. What? You see, the pixies were having this May Day celebration, even though
Images
it's June.
of goblins,
You know
their
how pixies
habits
are.
and
Anyway,
histories flash into
a bunch
your
of sprites
mind.
came along and captured the May Queen and her attendants. We rescued them. Sounds like a hard 2 minutes work. I mumbled. Sprites are never, ever, even remotely dangerous.
A
They have a
feeling
weird sense of
penetrates your
humor,
mind.
but they wouldn't harm anyone.
An anomaly.
Hey.
One like ourselves, unconnected
Don't
from
take
the
it out on
world.
me just because we got pixies
Caution.
and sprites.
Mind
We
flayer
got orcs and
horticulture.
rats. Fjorden snorted and stuck his big wedgy nose in the air. Sorry. I conceded. What about the dragon? Don't tell me. I mentally begged. They met a dragon. Not a real dragon. Not without me. Well, the dragon gave us. Not more than a dozen yards
Odd.
away, a wolf
I
owl.
feel better.
Fjorden and I put our backs to the nearest tree, knowing there wasn't time to actually climb it. The wolf must have heard us and cut itself off mid-cry. The trees were too thick for us to see anything, but we heard the crackle of branches and twigs, as though the creature might have jumped down from a tiny hole, or an outcrop of stone, or a tree stump, onto the forest floor, then nothing. Just the hammering of my heart, the smell of rich soil, the taste of sweat when I licked my lips.
History,
Boston,
elves,
I
dwarves,
shouted.
humans, and more.
Since it was for his sake that I was out here,
Wonder what
and the
plane
wolf
they're
knew where
from.
we were in any case. Here. Walston stepped out of the shadows so close that I jumped. We both jumped. Half went. The Arden snarled. There's a wolf loose. Walston passed him a disdainful look. He's gone. What are you doing? He asked. Tracking him? Yes. Walston said, his usual slow, goofy speech. It seemed to infuriate Fjorden, who repeated,
Walston's
half-wit.
sketchy, guys, I'm telling you.
Walston looked at him levelly, then asked me, who is this? Well, no. Said Fjorden.
We are trapped.
Rang Fjorden Massmilder. Son of Fjorden Sturdax, grandson of Fjorden Goldheart. Brother to Fjorden the Fjorden exaggerated about the
Remove us
treasure
from this
he and
body.
his group had won.
From this
There were huge
case,
bulging
free
sacks,
us.
gems. Those were set in jewelry, coins from most of the realms of man, elf, and dwarf, intricately worked golden combs, buttons, statuettes. The pixies, evidently, had been very grateful. The sprites buried the pen, and the dragon, the group, Fjorden explained, had gotten into a riddling contest with the dragon, the real
That'd
dragon.
be so
The
gross.
brain lifts from the skull.
I don't know if I'd actually do
Do
that
you
if this was
notice
a
an
game.
opportunity? You could cripple the strange creature,
But
making
apparently
it
they
more
hadn't needed me.
subservient should it prove a threat.
The dragon had been forced to give each of them one demand. Marion had asked for a cure for
Not all
monster.
creatures are precious.
The dragon said it didn't know anything about it. So Marion settled for gauntlets of power, which would increase the wearer's strength threefold.
Ugh.
She had already made long
It's like all the most unsettling things.
While
Our
Fjorden
freedom
and
is
I were
ours,
out looking for
friend.
Boston.
The
But they
creature
had no effect
pauses,
on her condition.
listening. Something behind your
Fjorden had
eyes
asked for and
seizes in
received a magic
recognition.
boat. 50 feet
We
of
must go to the
uncuttable twine
helm.
that could climb
At
up
the
any
helm
surface
we
on
are
its own and tie
needed.
itself into knots. Nokona had been less specific.
To the
But I
helm we
wanted to
go.
complete her quest. He'd
We are
said,
going to the
the
helm.
dragon had smiled and then handed over a tiny gold key. It had come with its own tiny golden box. Exquisite work despite the fact that it was the size of the contact lens case. The key itself was no thicker than
Doesn't do
tin foil.
anything.
I think he got taken.
Doesn't do
Fjorden
anything.
informed us. Seems totally useless to me.
Doesn't
Fancy
do
box,
anything.
Nokona observed. For a totally useless key. He tucked it back into his belt, not trusting anyone to touch it. What about you? Marion asked us. Did you bury your treasure or hide it away? Thea? Cornelius? And I looked at each other. What? You said you had treasure.
Do I have no
What
weapons?
did you do with it? Thea? Cornelius? And I indicated the pathetic little bundles hanging from our belts. I see, Marion said, positively dripping with politeness. If she had really been polite, she would have offered to share some of their treasure with us, of course. For us to be equally polite, we'd have had to refuse, since we've had nothing to do with it. Earning of it. But apparently she wasn't willing to risk that much on our manners. Our group ate our dinner of fish.
I feel like the druids had the best start of being dripped personally.
Since Marion, the Arden, and Nokona had already had 3 feasts that day, one with the pixies, one with the sprites, and one with the dragon. They couldn't possibly eat another bite, thank goodness. They hadn't thought to save any for us, but at least they had water skins, which they were willing to share. The way things had been going, I'd have expected them to charge us. The Arden and Nokona offered to take the first watch since, as the Arden pointed out. 3 times he pointed it out. We'd walked all day while they'd ridden. Boston and I pulled second watch. Leah and Cornelius third. Marion, who was still sulking about Robin, refused to be assigned. Gratefully, I fell asleep right away.
Abomination.
What felt like 2
This
minutes
is
later,
your end.
the Arden nudged me with his foot and told me it was my turn.
Your head throbs and your
quiet.
skin
I asked.
tingles. Visions rush past.
The Arden
A
said,
dragon's wing, a silver
snuggling
sword,
into his blanket.
and a
He still
flash
had a
of your
blank
I never
face
noticed she's got a
seen
fresh
through
set
the
on.
strange
I was
We
half
see you,
asleep
Queen.
already, to the west.
Oh,
Not very near.
my head.
I poked at the fire.
What is this?
Just something to do to keep awake. Sparks flared hotly. Fragrant smoke billowed. Sitting with his arms wrapped around
You
himself,
are no thrall.
Ralston scowled into the
Blackett
flames.
blesses me this day.
Sleep,
Together, we might
or
survive.
maybe disenchantment with her company. Now that he'd met all the members of it. I moved off to one side because
First,
from
we
where I was sitting, the
exterminate
fire
the
seemed to reflect
Then we
Cornelius'
find the
eyes.
helm and take
They're like
control
demon
of the
kitties.
ship. As for
The
that
moon had
thing,
set.
it will remain tame as long as it believes we are
Maybe
thralls.
tomorrow would be dry.
It may be of
I tried
use in the
counting
fight to
stars,
come.
but there were too many. Too close together. Farther away than before. But still closer than what I would have called not very near. A wolf howl. I saw Ralston turn in my direction, as though he signified I had to gauge my reaction. Another wolf. Somewhere to the north of the first. Answered and was in turn answered by yet another. Definitely to the east. And a fourth. From the south. Ralston stood. Looming big and dark. He was kind of stooped over. As though maybe he'd gotten stiff from sitting. The fire was little more than glowing embers, and I couldn't make out its features, even when he took a step closer to me. I think he was probably going to ask whether we should wake the others, and as he took another step, I decided I would tell him I felt maybe we should. It was a risk. The others would probably scoff and say we were jumping in shadows. Ralston looked like a shadow. Himself. Now that he had moved closer still, and the fire was behind him. And since when had I been afraid of the dark and of shadows? I scrambled to my feet, intending, I told myself, to meet him halfway. I took a step back.
Worth
Ralston growled
examining.
at me, a loud, deep-throated growl like nothing that had ever come from a human throat. I saw a glint of teeth. Then he lunged for me, and his fingers brushed my arm. There was a hum, thick smell about him, which he certainly hadn't had before, which put me in mind of the cages at the sea back home. That was my first sensation. Half a heartbeat later, the sound sank in, or rather, the meaning of the sound I'd heard as Ralston's fingers had grazed.
Close the gap.
It was the fabric of my shirt sleeve tear. Then, only then,
I mean, get good imp,
did I feel
but
the pain. From the inside of my elbow, through my wrist, into my palm, the left arm. Behind the fractured part of my brain, which would be the computer's version of warrior subconscious, luckily not the sword arm. And whilst it didn't have hold of me, it had been only a glancing flash. I threw myself back to tend on my sword, all the while screaming, Cornelius, the Arden.
yeah, quarterstaff, lame. Lame weapon. Hate it.
No color. Behind me, I was aware of the others. Scrambling through their own weapons even before they were fully awake. Arian, and Mom. Who I haven't had a chance to name. Walston threw his head back and howled. A long, drawn-out howl. Like anyone of several we had heard already that night, then, from all around us, came answering cries. And after that, the sound of dozens of bodies crashing through the woods, coming toward us. Though I generally use my sword one-handed, I felt awkward now that I knew I couldn't use my left. I tried to bury that feeling by charging the monster. He sprang away, raising his hands menacingly, but never going for his own sword, even without light to see more than the outline of his form. I could make out that the shape of his head was all wrong. And then we did have light. I heard the crackles out, which was Cornelius' light, and our campfire surged with temporary extra energy. Walston stood there in light as bright as day.
Yes, now begins the loot goblin.
Instead of a separate mouth and nose, he had a muzzle,
where I hoard every trinket.
He had hardly any forehead, and massive brows over yellow eyes that showed no light.
I feel like I'm playing like Android in this game. Like boy voice, girl body. Very elvish.
Curving claws extending beyond flexible, individual fingers. His body and part of his face were covered with a thick green pelt.
Why can't I not pickpocket this?
Cave machinery. I can make no
metal
sense
scraped
of
on
it.
metal as swords were drawn. And suddenly the wolf pack was on us. 50 or 60 of them with snapping jaws and slashing claws and bodies that hurtled at you when your back was turned and anyone busy fending off the 5 or 6 you could see. Walston seemed fixed on me. He still stood on 2 feet, and that made him less agile, less maneuverable than his 4-legged friends. But he had 2 things going for him. He was more intelligent than the full vegetables, and he seemed willing to let any number of them get skewered in order to reach us. For some
Flickers
reason,
in
he
his
wouldn't
eyes,
back off from me.
but he seems totally unaware of his
In no time, I was
surroundings.
covered with sweat and blood from battling the wolves, and my injured arm throbbed. Each time I leapt, each time I was jostled. Arrows of pain shot up toward my shoulder. Walston was always at the fringe of my sight, directing the attack. He had some sort of mind link with the wolves. He had seen it.
Oh, all of a sudden they have things I can steal off of their corpses?
Corpses in the room, a third man running. 24 more wolves of his
Yes, my love. You wait for me now.
Treated everything from the wrong perspective. He hadn't been running from them. He had been running with them. Exultant. Full of their own life. Fight ready to kill.
Faint images appear
That
in
was
your
why
mind.
Walston hadn't
A
run to us right
brave,
away.
Githyanki
Not
warrior.
panic or confusion
and
because of the
centuries
wolves,
of
but fear of us
darkness.
because we were the enemy. We had beckoned to him, shouted encouragement while picking off his companions, until finally he had realized us.
I'm mad I
if
can't
by
steal
this
the
time
Tesseract
he could have us with
like ahead of time.
We had put words into his mouth for him that the wolves were pursuing him. That
Worry not, my goth queen, we shall come back for you.
That the blood on him was from
Better not be cursed.
words we never actually said. Words he insisted on treating himself. He had spat out blood, and we had never guessed. We had said we were going to Sinatia, and so he had said that was where he was
See,
going.
I need for this.
He had tried to persuade us to spend the night in the forest rather than entering the shadow caves. Not
Nice.
bad advice in itself. But now I knew the wolves would have set on us then and there. Instead, they had circled around, gathering in number until he had called them during the evening when he was supposedly hunting. He had rescued us from the orcs. From the rats he had carried my mother, all for us to end here. I bid
Do I
back
need
away,
something in here?
trying to avoid him, hoping somebody else would get him with me.
How many hosts of these gay
Ranged
infected?
weapons, Cornelius with his magical bolts but no longer with arrows.
A ton lays
But
off.
he was just going to leave
That's-
us
Dazed woman is
Oh, no.
trapped inside
He
the
had
pod.
enough wolves to spare.
She doesn't
Then
notice
he
you.
was going to
I thought I
reach in
clicked
with
on
those
that.
incredibly long claws and disembowel me or rip my head off as a souvenir.
Woo.
I reminded myself that with my sword I had a longer reach than he did with his claws. I swept the head off a wolf who ran between us and moved in. Walston's lips curled back in imitation of a smile. I jabbed my sword at him, and he danced out of the way, moving to my left, where I had my injured arm close to my side. Walston's claws raked across the back of it. I heard
Now
the
that
tear
can
of
only
fabric and
end
skin.
in
In the fraction of
bad
a
stuff.
second that his momentum was slowed by his claws,
Now we go
catching
save the
him
Goth
at
Queen.
once, I swung my sword. It was pure instinct. I never expected to make
Then our
contact.
enemies to lovers will
The sword
quarrel.
shuddered to a stop with a disgusting noise. No, take that back. Noise is too strong a word. It was more like a sensation, sort of between a thud and a squish, so that even then, thinking I was about to die, it set my teeth on edge. Walston's eyes
We have
widened
no
and
time
choked,
for stragglers.
but he had enough strength to throw me down to the ground and land on top of me. I thought,
The construction is too alien.
here's the part where he eats my throat
Nothing
out
looks
while I'm still
familiar.
mostly alive.
This ship is
First he
crashing.
had his face
Do you
buried in
intend
my
to
neck.
die for a
Then I closed
stranger?
my eyes real tight. Nothing happened.
Good.
I managed to
Try
drag
using
the
it on that
shaky
machine
breath,
next to me.
when suddenly Walston pulled off.
Please.
I scrunched my eyes even tighter. Still nothing. I gave a quick
The
peek,
console appears dormant.
ready to close my eyes again if I saw something issue. I saw buck-skinned legs
The
and
console
moccasins.
hums to life.
No Kona, I whispered. My windpipe too battered to do any better. Beyond him,
Suddenly, you feel a
Walston
hideous
was flat on his
squirming in your
back, his
head.
arms spread out.
A parasite. Then discomfort
No, 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 no,
fades,
off me.
and
I
another
realized.
sensation washes over
Then
you.
stepped in to make sure I was all right.
Connection.
Around us. The sounds of
Authority.
battle were not nearly as fierce as before. I could hear sounds that I was willing to guess were the ones I knew. Someone. Cornelius. The Arden. Breathed. No Kona stood down beside me. Out of the corner of my eye, caught Walston's hand. Look out. I wheezed. No Kona pitched forward onto me.
You feel the
Knocking back out
biomechanical
here, I
brain
just
of the
managed to
console
turn. I
process your
heard him cry
command,
out. Or maybe it was
and
me.
yield to
There
it.
was a sharp crack,
A shiver
and the
runs
smell of
across your
sulfur and
mind.
charred flesh
You
that
feel
indicated Cornelius
sated.
had sworn ahead. I started. I can't. But couldn't get any more out. Luckily,
Thought I was done for.
considering the word I was trying for was breathe, no Kona rolled off.
Can I pickpocket her?
I started
I
to
cannot
sit up,
pickpocket her.
but somebody tackled me. A flurry of arms and hair and sweaty body. Everything was kind of swimming around, but I didn't need to see. I'm okay, Mom, I said. I'm okay.
Not worth.
Chapter 25. Aftermath. Something
Give me the
went wrong
Tesseract.
for me, Marion, I think. Everybody was shouting.
I thought that
and
damn
crowding.
thing was going
I
to be
need
my
know if
coffin.
I was all right. I
Thank you.
couldn't breathe, and my vision
Your
was
mind
full of
lurches
and there
into
was an awful
thoughts.
pain in
It
the
could have
half
been
of
your
my
heart.
leg where I
Gratitude
didn't
is
remember
mixed
being
with
injured.
wariness,
Correct.
because you have a
Correct.
gift with you.
My mother's voice cut
You
through the
keep
buzzing in my
dangerous
ears.
company.
I could make out her face in the black holes that were dancing in front of my eyes. The ardent bellowed. Everyone shut up. Everyone did. Gently. Mom said to me, "You're hyperventilating. Breathe slower.
I did.
Breathe
It must be
slower."
because of those parasites
I
they
couldn't
put in
get a
us.
breath at all.
They'll have to wait.
Tarek,
I need to get off
She
this
should
ship
be.
alive first. Let me
I thought
come
of
with
all
you.
those war movies.
We can get
where
off
the
this
lift
ship
goes
and watch each
hysterical
other's
and
backs
someone
along the
gets
way.
to slug you. My leg. I wheezed. So
Shadow
that they could
Hand.
see how bad it really was.
One moment.
I wondered if it was still attached. It's just a cramp. Mom assured you. Breathe like this. Mom. Come on. Exhale like you're trying to blow out 3 candles. What is this?
Finally.
The natural
Let us make for the
childbirth
helm.
method of fantasy
We've wasted enough
role-playing.
time already.
But just talking to her forced
She's
me
right.
to breathe more slowly.
Lead on.
And the cramp in my leg was already dissolving. I breathed the way she wanted me to, in a few seconds. Her face sharpened into clearer focus. She was pale and grimy and blood splattered. "Are you all right?" I asked her. She smiled. A soft, gentle smile. Though her eyes filled with tears.
England's breeds
She put her
marvelous.
hand to my cheek and nodded, perhaps not trusting her voice.
Well, that ends.
I hugged her
As
to
bad as
me.
it could have.
I hate this. She whispered damply into the space between my shoulder and my neck. hate it. I hate it. My own eyes were filling. I'm sorry I got you into this, I said. She bridled him.
We are nearing the helm.
She
Once
said,
inside,
pulling
do
away.
as I say.
Get me into
Who put
anything.
you in charge?
fact,
I'll trust my
I
own
practically
judgment.
begged to play. She wiped her sleeve across her face, smudging it even worse. Helplessly, I looked at the mess in the clearing. Then, Walston had reverted to the appearance of a regular wolf, a large, carboiled, regular wolf. There were 20 or 30 other wolf bodies scattered about the clearing. As for the people in our company, they all looked terrible, dirty, sweaty, bloody. They had twigs and leaves
girl
in their hair
boss.
like she'd been put out. Her pale blonde hair was singed short.
Ooh, I want that flaming sword so bad.
Until she pulled into the campfire. Faces dancing around her scattered leaves and hanging loose over her shoulders. Marion, pulling off her gauntlets of power, had a gash on her cheek. Nora was still sitting next to me.
I think we can do it, guys.
Trying
Let's
to
do it in one go.
the Arden was wrapping the length of cloth around raw and bloody knuckles.
The nerves of the transponder. We must escape.
He asked.
Now.
I shook my
Do
head.
it. We will deal with the gate
Framed this
after we
close,
escape.
You could tell I'd been getting weepy.
Connect the nerves.
He did look
Nerves.
convinced. Are you sure?
Them.
Yeah. I held my arm for the closed out and back off. Test followed. He did back off. He took a real close look, like he didn't trust me. What difference does it make? Mom asked. The Arden said. That was a cold chill on my back. Marion explained. A player whose werewolf bit has a 1 in 3 chance of turning into a werewolf himself in the next 2 to 12 rounds. Mom gulped. What's a round? Hard to tell without dice. Cornelius sighed. I was bitten, Mom said. One of the wolves. Only the werewolf. Cornelius told her.
Oh, I forgot I downloaded that. Nice.
Not one ordinary wolves.
Victory awaits.
Mom shook her head. Darren let go of my arm. Come on, he said. We'd have had to keep them tied up for the rest of the game. Werewolves can't help what they are, but what they are is treacherous. Knock them off. The Arden. Marion said. Luckily, everybody is okay. Is everybody okay? We all nodded that we were okay. What we've got to do is rest as much as we can to regain our strength for tomorrow. Harek, I'll finish off your watch with you. She helped me to my feet. Need help with that, eh? No, Kona. Just twisted. No, Kona told her. Marion was into her bossy mode again. Okay. Everybody tried to settle down as fast as possible, she said. Tomorrow's going to be a big day. Yeah, I sighed. That's what I'm afraid of. Chapter 26. Day 4. Considering that I was on watch with Marion for a good hour and a half and she didn't say more than 2 words to me, it came as a shock the following morning when she announced to the group that she had decided to join them. I choked on the warm water that was all we had for breakfast and couldn't get a word out. Cornelius said that Kona's water sitting down with his lunch and said, in a tone that should have frozen Marion's blood. She said, if I'm in Ontario, back to the clearing behind Fred's house. There's no way he can ever make up the time on his own. If I go and get him with horses, we can join up with him 24 hours. Marion, he said, we're all ready. She glanced at me. It was still curled up, asleep after having been singing her stomach during the earliest hours of the morning. We're already 4 people short. That's why we need Robert. Feeling the sound of it disgust and exasperation. She got up and went to help them grab ready the horses. He was favoring one leg, limping when he thought no one was watching. As for my injury, My arm hadn't moved significantly during my 8-hour sleep. It was still sore and weak. But it looked as though it had been healing for 5 or 6 days. So did the gash on Marian's cheek. Even Thea's scorched hair was growing back. Only Mom never recovered at the accelerated rate. Only Mom got steadily worse. I glared at Marian. Being with Robin is more important to her than taking care of my mom, I thought angrily. And you'll take the horses, Yurick said. 2 horses. There's already only 4 horses for 7 of us. And you want to cut that down to 2 for 6? Look, Marian said, either way. Some of you are going to have to walk. Either that or we'll double up. Which will kill the horses once you get to the desert. Felice won't be able to stand a lot of jostling either. I suppose. Cornelius agreed, as though it were up to him. There's 2 more days to this adventure, and we certainly haven't been breaking any records. The big encounter won't be till tomorrow. If we live that long, I said. I looked to the Yurick, hoping he'd back me in saying that dividing was foolhardy, but he just shrugged. Felice is awfully weak, Cornelius said. Probably better strap her to the horse. Yurick got up to help him. Leaving me alone with Marian, Yurick said, "You think like a girl, Tarek," she said. "You know I'm right. Hey, listen." I told her. "You're going to do what you want anyway. You don't need to convince me you're right. Robin wouldn't be so silly." I offered. He put the good of the group before his need to be with his pistol.
Must take the transponder.
Marian sighed again. "I'm real worried about you, Mother, Arvin."
Let's finish this.
I screamed at her. "My name is Harak. And you sure have a funny way of showing your concern. Has it occurred to you?" Marian said softly, unaffected by my temper, "Harak, but there's something seriously wrong here. It's a stupid game," I grumbled. "I wish I'd never joined. It is not a game. It has nothing to do with the game. That's why I've got to find Robin, so we can work together to get out of it." Alert. Low battery.
If this ship hits the ground, we're dead.
It is not. It is not a game. It has nothing to do with the game. That's why I've got to find Robin. It is not a game.
What should I do?
It has nothing to do with the game. That's why I've got to find Robin.
It has nothing to do with the game. That's why I've got to find Robin. So we can work together to get out of here as soon as possible. Correct. If you can think of any way to speed this up, to get out of here entirely, say it now.
She wasn't just trying to justify herself. She was talking about my mom, and she was scared. And that scared me. "What are you getting at?" I asked. Reluctant to look me in the face. And that scared me. She shook her head. Then stole a quick peek at me. "I don't know anything more than you do, Tarek." I sat there watching her. It's just. I'm worried that there's something wrong with her. Really wrong with her. Nothing to do with the character is Felice, or the quest all Rasmus.
Give up.
This was something that had been pulling at the borders of my mind. No, I didn't say that. I said, "You're crazy, Marian." "The program has direct contact with our brains," she said. "Which is why we feel we're here when we know we're not. But it's all condensed. Concentrated. That's why we experience 5 days when it's only an hour. Correct. Correct. What if there's something going on in your mother's body so that her brain is trying to see signals that something is wrong? That's stupid, I said. I hope so. I chewed on my lip. Something wrong like what? So Marion opened my eyes. Something wrong with her brain. Marion turned in her sleep. Marion, I begged. I don't know. It's just that that's what my mother died of. A stroke. It happened just like that. She snapped her fingers. There was no warning because it happened so fast. I'm just wondering if your mother's giving a warning because time here feels so stretched out. She made a vague gesture like holding a giant rubber band. I shook my head. My mother isn't having a stroke, I said.
I am dead.
Her headache is just glitched in Shelton's program. Marion couldn't bring herself to say it, but then she was obviously trying to get out.
Oh no.
Good. I thought. Marion at a loss for words. I thought. And then something struck me. My jaw dropped. Your mother died. We'd just been over there a couple weeks earlier. For a moment, my mind flitted to the idea that she was talking about her character's mother. Marion looked at me as though I were a slut. Of course she died. You stupid little weasel pustule of an 8th grader. You were in the funeral home. I wasn't. I insisted. The only times I've ever been to a funeral home was my uncle Lenny died and when Noah's mom.
I can't give up.
I must have looked as spastic as I sounded. Things. Something fell into place. Marion put her hands on her hips and looked exasperated. Just like a girl. I said, "You're no weasel pustule," Marion answered, sweeping to her feet. Chapter 27. Miller's Grove. So, right in the Miller's control, Marion, who was no, headed back to find Mother, who was not, and we launched Miller's Grove, leading the remaining 2 horses, the one with Mom tied on, and the one carrying the treasure. I watched Mom's limp raceway with the rhythm of the horse's steps and thought back to when I'd been a little kid. How? If I had the flu or an earache or something, my mother would get this worried look on her face. Sitting on the edge of the bed while she put cold washcloths on my forehead, she'd say, "Don't be sick." And I promised to try hard not to. Don't die. I wanted to tell her. But I didn't want to scare her. I didn't want to scare myself. Marion's crazy. I told myself instead. It was a nice walk, but it didn't help. It took us almost 3 hours. The only thing that kept me going was the thought that we could buy something to eat from the miller. First we heard the rushing of the river, then the creak of the mill wheel, then the thumping of the machinery inside. The miller must have seen us in the window. Wiping
Oh,
his
no.
hands on a cloth he wore tucked into his belt like an apron. At first he looked worried. No
Guys,
wonder.
we might not be able to
He
maintain
was
this.
desperate, rough long. But then he recognized Fjorden and Nogula. I see you did finally meet up with your friends. Nogula, wasn't it? He took Nogula's hand and shook it. Although Nogula was simply trying to hold his hand up in India's Let's see.
Time to strike.
Fjorden didn't give the amiable Miller time to grope for the name. Fjorden, he said, "Ask Miller, son of."
You bow. Or
Yes.
you break.
The Miller said, pumping his arm, still smiling. Fjorden. He started to turn to leave. Whoops. Fjorden didn't let go of his hand. Fjorden asked Miller. He repeated more loudly.
Oh no.
Slowly, but distinctly. The Miller froze.
Oh no.
Realizing what he had done. Son of Fjorden Strauss, grandson of Fjorden Volthard, brother to Fjorden the Fearless. Fjorden was getting louder with each generation. great-grandson of Fjordine Scout Arm who served undergraduate in accident. His eyes. And you could see this one vein on the side of his forehead throbbing. The miller gulped. I don't, Fjordine said. Have a mace with me. The miller gulped again. No, you don't. He agreed shakily. He waited several long seconds to be sure Fjordine had finished. Finally he cast a furtive glance at me, at the rest of us. Well, he took a step backward. Welcome to all of you. It was good to meet you. I've got to get back to my work. Wait, I said. We have an injured member in our party. The miller's gaze drifted over all of us. Here. Impatiently. I indicated all, saying, tied to the horse. He watched me with a wary expression. The horse is injured, he asked. I gritted my teeth. The lady on the horse. Technically speaking, Mom was a female thief, not a lady. But I was getting ticked off at the way he kept looking right through her like she wasn't even there. The lady. The miller repeated, only glancing at Mom, his eyes roving over me. He stole a quick look at the others, then took a step away. It was almost like icy spiders scurried up and down my arms. He had grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and shoved his face practically into his. The lady. Yes. The miller assured us. Of course, the lady. No clear he also he was obviously getting pretty graphic and shouting all the time. I consciously tried to speak calmly. We're in desperate need of all of us. We're willing to pay. He'll let go of him. And the miller shook his head. I mean, he shook his head no. The rest of him was shaking already. Even his voice quivered. I'm sorry. We have nothing.
Do it. We will deal with the gate after we escape.
The last couple of miles.
Connect the
The bark on the
nerves.
trees had begun to look
We
good.
will connect them.
I don't mean we don't have much. We don't have any.
I grabbed his sword.
What happened to others? He indicated southeast.
Must connect
Exactly
the
the opposite direction we were interested in. To go to the market. This is a mill. Cornelius pointed out. Surely you have bread. The miller shook his head. You don't understand. My wife. She took all the bread to market to sell. I have raw grain and stone ground flour. No bread. I thought he looked genuinely distressed, but apparently no, it wasn't right. Is it immoral? He asked philosophically, looking at no one. In particular, to knock down someone who doesn't really exist outside of our mind and ransack his house. Mom groaned in her sleep.
Can't stay idle.
All of us turned. About 5 seconds later, out of the corner of my eye, I saw him return also. He had a gun.
It's the hardest.
He only turned to see what we were looking at. His eyes went straight past me, to the horizon beyond her. He told us, the wife will be back by midday with meat and fresh vegetables, and she'll start making too. You're welcome to wait.
time to strike.
We all looked at each other. Cornelius said, surely we shouldn't waste a whole day. No, I said.
Nothing important is ever easy.
No. The others agreed. Miller shifted his gaze from one to the other of us. Suddenly he snapped his fingers. There it is. Then he shook his head. Again he became more animated. But on the other hand, if you're really desperate, he debated himself out of it. Still. What? You're ready to cheat you. There is a part of the house that I'd forgotten about, but I'm not sure. Aaron grabbed him by the shirt. This better not be a matter of money. Considering that the man was half again as tall as the dwarf, and twice as wide, it was a tribute to the ferocity in the Arden's face that the miller turned white and stared, and then it no. It's a matter of elevating. The Arden had pulled down one of the guy's shirts so that their noses were touching despite their difference in height. Beg your pardon, we already asked. Last week, my wife left a garage and burned it.
Survival is all that
Using the
matters.
loaves as doorstops. Doorstops? The miller said. I didn't think to mention them
You've
because,
seen everything.
they're not fit for human consumption. Suddenly remembered to make
Concentrate.
and so we sat down on the grassy lawn. Learned that we had to soak in river water before we break off pieces, and the miller charged us with silver pieces each trip. I told the miller as I poured the coins into his own. They tapped the top one for each of us. Yes, the miller said. One for the lady. I understand. He glanced at the horse, smiled, and nodded. Lady. He said something. Of course. I think you already helped Mom
No
down.
other
She was sitting on the
We
grass
must
with
take
her
the
rest of
transponder.
brain damaged old coot. I muttered as he went to fetch a sixth loaf.
My path be true.
He tried to feed it to the horse. Cornelius, who'd given his loaf to Mom, took it from him. Now, said Cornelius, wiping his sleeve across his mouth where water squirted out as he bit into his bread. About our sick companion. The lady, the miller said, giving his friendly grin to the horse. We'd like her to stay here.
I wonder if
This was
it's
not
worth the
something we had
cost.
decided, or even talked
Swift as my
about.
feet can
I
carry me.
stopped at Minshew and glanced at the others to see if they might help us all back. They didn't seem to be, except, of course, for Mom, who had taken maybe 3 bites of bread, then laid her head down on the grass. Cornelius, I said. The miller said. Alright.
Ready.
Cornelius told me it would be the best thing for her. She could rest. She'll be safe here. He turned his attention back to the miller. We'll pay you to watch over her. This is no boarding house. Obviously, the miller had had enough. He turned his back on us and headed inside. Cornelius called after him. I stared. He can't even see her. No, Mona said.
I must reach
The
the hand.
program wouldn't allow for it anyway. There's no telling what would happen if you tried. Again, I said, I can't see her. Somebody would have had to stay with her, he already added. And the group's divided enough already. We were getting pretty tired of you making decisions for us, he said. Look. Cornelius started. I just thought. Mom opened her eyes and whispered, put a lid on it. I wouldn't have stayed anyway. In that case, Cornelius said, at the risk of getting accused of making decisions for everybody, I'd say we'd better get going. Chapter 28. Desert. The desert crossing was worse than I'd imagined. I can say that despite the fact that we met no one and nothing out of the ordinary. No sand hands. No giant snakes. No killer sandstorms or flash floods or sun-crazed nomads. On the other hand, it was hot. The sand was hot. The air was hot. We were hot. The sand dragged at our steps, leaving us exhausted even as we were just setting out. I could feel the heat through the leather of my boots, and once, when I didn't step high enough and pitched forward onto my hands, I cinched my palms into
Sometimes the
seconds
only way
before I
out
made myself
is through.
around our faces, hoping that would filter out some of the scent or struggles churned into the air and maybe give the air
Stay
breathe a
focused.
chance to cool off before it hit our lungs. Before we were farther than shouting distance from the ridge road, we'd already been into the water supply. Despite the shredded blankets wrapped around their legs, the horses walked just about every step. They nipped and kicked and just generally made themselves unpleasant. Mom had dismounted so we could handle them more easily. There was no telling how long she would walk on her. About 10 minutes, he estimated. This is not going to work, he said. We need to leave the horses, I suggested. They're holding us back. Oh, sure.
Still on
That's
my
easy
feet.
for you to say. Fjorden told me. What about our treasure? You can't leave that behind. I said. It won't do us any good if we die in the desert.
To let up.
Oh, yeah? He said. Yeah. I said. You think you can make me? I think.
No time like the
Cornelius
present.
said. I have an idea. We all turned on him. Even though Now wait a minute. Cornelius said over the shouting and hitting. Will you just listen to me? I can use my levitation stuff. I said. I don't see how that would help. Levitation can get us up off the sand, but it won't get us closer to sedation.
Where do I go from
I
here?
could levitate the horses, Cornelius explained, and say, 2 riders each, Felice. Obviously, myself, of course. The rest of you could alternate. Take turns to ride, and to pull the levitating horses along. It'll be a lot easier than trying to drag the horses. No, Kona said, welling it over. Why do you get to ride?
Let's end this.
Because I need to concentrate on the stuff. Figures, I said. We used Fjordan's magic rope, tying each into one of the horses. Thea and I lost the drum and got to be the leading things, or draft horses, however you choose to look at it. Cornelius shared her horse with Mom. She was looking a little better. In other words, Britt must have done her good, for her face had lost that pitch hollowness, but her hair, not healthy for days we did, no longer hung halfway down her head. It was so tangled,
Come a
it
little
barely reached
closer.
her shoulders, and it was coated with a fine layer of sand, so that it looked less like the dark and glossy gypsy hair with which Felice had started out and more like Mom's own brown and gray hairstyle. Cornelius closed his eyes and concentrated. The horses didn't look too happy about being 3 feet off the ground, but they soon caught on that this way their hooves were out of the burning suits. Thea and I started pulling on the rope, and Cornelius was right. It wasn't like pulling the full weight of the horses. It wasn't too much harder than just slogging through the sand on her. Chapter 29. Senatia.
Hurry! Before they strike!
We arrived at Senatia shortly after midday. Sand from the desert had blown into the streets. Scrubby grass and weeds had sprouted in unlikely spots, like between the steps in front of buildings and in somebody's pillbox, where they crowded out the flowers. Looks like nobody's been here in years, I said. No Kona. Fjorden had been guiding the horses. Tooth down. Goblin tracks. He pointed out irritably. Obviously goblins have been here. Nobody besides goblins, I corrected. I waited for Cornelius to lower the horses. Mounting and dismounting had been like being 4 years old again and picking a carousel horse stuck to the top of its lead. Get out, Montana. Are you alright? I asked. I just need to sit on something soft that doesn't move, Mom whispered. We really should begin, Cornelius said. There's a lot of territory to cover. I gave a hand to Nokona, who hadn't stood up from examining the tracks. I half expected him to consider it an insult to his Indian or something, but his ankle must have been sore enough so that he didn't care. He'd probably done more than sprain it. He'd probably chipped one back the bone, or it had healed by now. Even my arm was half healed. He left himself up heavily and turned his face away so I wouldn't see him. Let's try the barracks first, Fjorden suggested, since that's right here.
Concentrate.
It was spooky walking down the streets, though the inhabitants had deserted, or from which they'd been snapped 20 years earlier. Goblins had vandalized the place. Doors were kicked in so that they hung on their hinges and rattled in the breeze. Leather mattresses had been tossed out of windows and gotten soggy from the rains. Wooden furniture had been used for bonfires in the middle of streets. There hadn't been a systematic looting. Goblins aren't interested in treasure the way people are, but it learn.